Hi, I'm Corporal David Jones and I am an instructor at Mechanical Training Flight, and today I'm going to give you a tour of the Jaguar from the point of view of both somebody who is an aircraft mechanic and also I build models, and I did spend the weekend building this Jaguar as fast as I could to get a really good idea of what's available in the kit. And I'm going to go through now and I'm going to highlight various parts of it to you that I think are probably pertinent to you for when you're making your own, things that you might find interesting that you won't necessarily see on the internet. So let's move on through and start from the nose, and we're going to work round to the back and then hopefully go over the top of it as well. So we start at the front. Here we have the pitot probe. This is what gathers airspeed and altitude data. Oh, there we go. So this is modeled in the kit beautifully. It's nicely scaled, and the first thing you'll notice is that this is quite unusual as pitots go, because it's only actually metallic up until this point here, and then from here on you transition to the aircraft camouflage color, which in this case is green, or if you eventually get on to do a gray one or the desert one, that will be the aircraft, that color as well. It is just after the fin part. That's where your transition is. And then moving back, you can see there are various chips here from age. They are down to the silver metal, but there is little hints of the zinc chromate primer as well. Moving back, this is the glass part of the laser designator, which isn't actually fitted in this aircraft, but you would actually see it just about here. It would be a round glossy circle of a lens, so gloss black, for example. So I did think for a few seconds when I was making it about whether to stick the actual lens in. You could potentially do that, and you'd be able to see that through the front. The glass itself, that is pretty transparent, so there's no tint to it whatsoever, and all the way around here you have a lot of chipping and weathering because this is going to be in the airflow proper. And then if you look at the forward edge, it is actually brown, so this is basically sealant, so PRC, so you might want to colour that in a slightly different colour. As we move back to the side, we have the first camouflage. Notice this is actually feathered, so this is not a hard camouflage. The majority of these aircraft have soft camo, but some of the ones over there, which we'll show you in a minute, are occasionally hard camouflaged as well. So we've got a nice soft transition. It's not really marked, but you can see it. So there's the RAF sort of dark grey to the dark sea grey at the back. Moving along, we've got all sorts of nice examples of chipping here, and you can see this does have your sort of classic darker panel line look to it, and the kit has all of these modelled in, and these would benefit from a dark grey wash potentially. Here we've got the in-flight refueling probe, which is stowed and can't be deployed in the kit, but you wouldn't see it out that often on the ground. And actually you can see the light grey seal here, which is actually a rubber seal. And this is just all the way around here in like a J shape. And this shows you what you would, this is something you'd maybe want to paint in if you're feeling really nuts. The emergency pull handle is featured as a decal and looks really good, to be honest. It is clear in real life, so you could do something funky by painting it yourself. But I think the decal is really good. This particular aircraft is a Germany jet, so it has a load of the German stencils, which are featured in the 2-squadron option of this kit. So you've got Cabin, Dach, Nord, Auslösung, which is, and other such fun, long, strung together nouns that are featured in the kit. This blank here is just for the little vents. You can barely see these in the model, and I wouldn't worry too much about them, but this is one of the aircraft blanks that you could potentially attach on if you felt like making it. Another place to hang a nice remove before flight tag. Moving up, you can see these. This jet has been a little bit in the weather since it's flown, so you can see there is a bit of wear on these particular stencils. But it gives you an idea that they aren't very, very bright. They are quite sort of, they do tone into the color rather. And then we have our nice big roundel here. If you look up, you can see there is chipping damage along the edge of the cockpit as well, although we'll see a little bit more of that when we go upstairs. This is the gun shroud, which is a lovely piece on the model, glued in separately. This is a shiny metal, so we're going to call that, it's titanium, I would say. And this has been actually covered in a sort of inhibiting paint, so it has this sort of hull red sheen to it. So you could potentially paint this in titanium and then weather it down as you wish, because I think this has probably worn off more over time than it would have seen in service, but there's a lot of the original color left inside. Moving along, we actually have the intake blanks here. These are actually already pretty well worn, but they would have discolored pretty nicely. I'm still holding the pitot cover. This would have discolored pretty nicely in service as well. So you'd be looking at more the color you probably see on the back is what you would have. They're not particularly clean. The kit gives you mold-in metal ones, which are one of the other ones that were used in service. This is the more soft, plushy type. But if you want to make these, you basically just need to set it up so that they stick slightly proud. And this is another brilliant place you can stick a remove before flight tag if you see fit. Rolling back, we have, after the gun shroud, we have these vents. Now, there are two options included in the kit. There is the pre-mod with 3 holes not existing, and then as the aircraft was in service, they discovered they needed more venting here. So you have the early 3-hole pre-mod, which is most likely going to be used with the pointy nose jets before they were adapted. And then the post-mod is what you see here with the 6 gun holes, and this is glued in separately. Moving along, we've got the air intake with the auxiliary air doors. These are modeled closed on the kit, but you can see there's been a repaint here. This is just hand brushed, and you can also see the weathering, the leading edge paint on the actual intake edge, which, as you can see, is actually very irregular and has been touched up many times. If you can get a dark line around these intake around here, that would look really good. They are fairly prominent when you look at them. Moving back, we have, of course, the squadron marking. This is 14 Squadron, not one offered, but you can actually see that this has actually been hand brushed and isn't very bright or shiny. We didn't use vinyl stickers because they do tend to wear off rather. And then rolling along, we have the gun door itself. Again, nice dark lines. And we've got another camouflage change. Now, what's curious here is you can see that actually this door is not original to this jet, or potentially this panel isn't. But as you look, you can see the dark green actually changes, and you have places where the camouflage doesn't match up. This would be pretty normal on in-service jets, especially as the GR1s got into, say, the 90s, when they were sort of towards the end of their time before they got modified. You would have seen a lot of changes in the camouflage, where you got mismatched panels. And if you angle up here, you've actually got another example where the leading edge tip of the wing has been changed, and you can see that's still in primer. Little features like that do add sort of color and realism to these jets. Rolling along, we have this black panel here. Now, my expertise on Jaguar can't tell you exactly why this particular portion is black, but as you can see, because it has a sort of neoprene-ish cover, it weathers really badly, and you can see a lot of the watermarks as we move under the wing, where it's basically just sort of stained and paled off over time. Here, the ground access doors are closed, but we can certainly go and look at some that are not closed, and we can look at the wheelbase on a separate pass. Then we have the leg itself. The leg is a very nice dark grey, but you can see on the leading edge where you've worn back to chromate primer. Pretty much everything on this jet was chromate, and then it was painted over. So it's got this nice distinct yellow, and you can see that on the door as well. It is quite a deep yellow when you look at it. It's pretty sort of standard zinc chromate is what I've used to paint my model. There are some hide lines over the top which aren't featured in the kit, but would be very easy to add if you saw fit. And as we get onto the knuckle area, you can see there is a lot of dirt, so a lot of chalk and washes, whatever you prefer, would help make this area look realistic. It is extremely smutty, even if after the aircraft's been washed. The tyres here, these are part worn, so you can actually see that these have marks from landing, and they're scratched and they're scuffed. So you could actually replicate that on the kit. And again, we have a nice dark grey hub going along. Here we have air brakes. They are stowed. Stowing the air brakes is not an option on the kit, but you can actually do it if you so choose. The air brakes actually sits over the top of the engine bay door, which is not fitted in this example. And we'll look at a different jet to see what we can get from that. But as you can see, the air brake is stowed back here, and you can actually see there's a lot of oil and dirt that you get accumulating around here. This is where the hydraulic rig would be plugged into, so you do get a lot of smut and smearing in this area. Moving on to the wing. Now it is pretty dark under here, but you can see we don't have pylons fitted on this particular aircraft, but if you look, you can see the camouflage extends underneath, and a lot of these later aircraft didn't have the big serial numbers drawn on the underside. You can see there is, on this particular jet, there is a patch that has been cleaned back to be examined, probably for non-destructive testing, and has just been painted over in a light yellow primer. We have replacement panels on the leading edge slats, which are deployed like they are in the kit. And if you move back to the flap tracks, you can see that they are actually camouflaged much the same color as the underside of the wing. So that side looks distinctly dark gray, and this is actually green, just like this portion of the wing here. So they aren't a distinctly different color at all. And moving outboard, we have, of course, the roundel, which is just sat there nicely in between the panels. It is quite evenly spaced. And we have the holes for the pylons, which are the main bolts are forward, and then the support pins are to the rear. And that pretty much reflects where the holes are drilled in the kit. So we'll look at the engine bay door on a different aircraft, because we have them removed here for training purposes. You can see the serial here, and I'm pretty sure, I can't remember how many inches tall these are, but this is a pretty typical font serial. We do have some aircraft in here where they have been later applied with vinyl, but this is actually original to flight as far as I can tell. You can see the very distinctive shaped 9s and 6s and 8s that kind of dates it rather well to show that it's actually period. Now, moving to the tailplane, we have the leading edge neoprene black. This has been weathered very much to a sort of gray and has cracked over time, but in service life, this would have been somewhat darker. But this stuff doesn't age well, to put it mildly. And if we transition up to the fin next, you can see the leading edge neoprene on the fin is actually in very good condition here. We've got a nice soft camo line. We have the aircraft lettering outlined in white. And we have that distinctive, weird-looking fin, which is cut out at the back for the rudder. And that is a radio aerial, not my field of expertise, but that is also a matte black. And then as you go higher, you can see the RHWRs, which are basically identification, friend or foe. They're pretty much, you see that on any warplane that's served in the last 30, 40 years. They have this nice sort of sandy coloured front and rear portion. Those are actually composite panels. They're made out of fiberglass, and then they're not actually painted. That's just the colour they are. You can see the actual navigation light, even though it has a black leading edge and a clear rear edge. And then the fin caps, though they are black originally, they often shade to grey as well over time. And even in serving jets, you'll see that they've worn quite substantially. Moving along underneath the engine, we have the titanium heat shield just here. We don't have an arrestor hook fitted on this particular jet, you'll notice if you're feeling observant. But these are heat shield panels, and these are modelled with little recessed dimples. And then the raised rivets are actually the attachment fasteners. And you'll notice that there is a distinct colour difference between the inward-facing titanium panels nearer the engine, and these here, these have got a distinct silvery sheen, whereas these are much more your dark exhaust. And though these will have been cleaned, but you can put a fair amount of dark smut onto these and that would look realistic. And then moving back, we've got another slightly different coloured panel towards the tail cone, just here with this nice transition. And this portion on the arrestor hook is actually grey, so it's aircraft coloured. And we have a arrestor hook safety pin fitted, and these would have been fitted on the ground at all times, so you can model the aircraft with this fitted if you like. It's another nice little genuine feature. So if we now move around to the engine exhausts themselves, we have got, you can see just in real life without the aid of a light just how very dark they are, so you don't really need to worry too much about the inside. It wouldn't be that visible in sort of natural light conditions. In there is the reheat manifold, and that is a sort of a mixture of sort of chalky white and grey. And then we have the tunnel, and then we have the actual reheat nozzle, which opens for reheat. This is modelled closed on the kit where it should be, and you can see there is an awful lot of dark dirt all over this nozzle. The actual shroud on the outside, which moves forward and backwards to open the nozzle, that is a sort of dark sort of steel colour, and you can actually see there is actually a distinct sort of flat edge where the nozzle is, and this is actually reflected in the kit. So now we're on the other side of the jet. You'll notice I've actually moved to a different Jaguar here. This one has got the ground access doors open, which is really useful, and the engine bay doors fitted. And we're going to move along. We'll look at some of the probes on this side as we move as well. This is actually a ground serial, so this is an instructional airframe number. You could literally Google this and find out the history of this jet, but we allocate this to ground instructional. So this is not a flight number. You wouldn't see this in real life. Moving back, we have the side pitos. These are a titanium sort of finish just here, and they are covered as well. We can remove some blanks to have a look. Oh, he says, I forget how tight these are. There we go. This is, I'm pretty sure, some sort of temperature probe. Again, you can see it's got a little leading edge, and this has got quite a nice dark metallic colour to it as well. That'll be nice. I'll put this one back on. And then moving here, we have, this is the angle of attack indicator. This is a very thin sort of, this would pretty much be a wire on the model if you wanted to add it. And this actually just moves to show the angle of attack of the aircraft. But again, this is quite a high sort of chrome silver. And pop that back on. There we go. That will be it. Stay. Oh, good. Moving along, this is just the NACA duct. As they say, it's just a scoop. So that also has a blank fitted to it. And you can see it's got a nice little line around it. And something I'll sort of draw your attention to is this particular jet has got a hard camouflage. They weren't all soft. If you want to make a particular model, definitely check your references. This has very much got a hard camo line paint to it because they weren't painted that uniformly in reality. And even where the camouflage falls, oh, the blank has just fallen off. I'll pick that up later. And even where the camouflage actually falls on the aircraft, because they were painted by people, though there is a standard pattern, they're not exactly 100% the same. This is more of a vanilla aircraft, so we've not got any Germany markings on the rescue. We actually have a stick-on ejection seat marking rather than the painted one. Moving along, you've actually got this gun shroud here is a little different to the other one. This has got a different sort of inhibiting paint on it. It has worn a little bit, but is distinctly sort of a matte black, very dark grey. That is worthy of note. So while we're here, we may as well hit the nose leg as well, since we didn't on the other side. Again, dark grey, very much. Now the insides of the undercarriage doors are chromate painted. And as we'll have a look nice and close, you will see that actually there is an awful lot of dirt and smut in between the millings, and that is all modelled in the kit, so you can actually wash that in. The backs of the lights are a matte black, and you can paint that as well. And then the leg slots really nicely into the undercarriage bay, and we'll explore the undercarriage bays in a separate pass because this definitely needs a light. It is really greasy. There we go. This is the bonding lead, which earths the aircraft. So whenever the aircraft's on the ground and not being used, there would be a lead, and that goes to the inside of the undercarriage bay. So if you're making a scene where it's in, say, a hangar, this would be a really nice thing to add. And it wouldn't be that hard to do. Rolling back, undercarriage door, very much model open. Again, this has got its ground doors open. The other aircraft we just looked at had them shut, and you can see the hard camouflage line just here. And then moving to the rear. This has got its ground access door open. So these are effectively modeled open for maintenance purposes. So the aircraft we've just looked at, that is in a ready-to-fly condition, effectively. These are an open option in the kit, but one thing we do need to look at is this is actually the switch that operates these doors. So just here. This is where the ground power is attached. So this can stay closed if you don't want to put a power lead on. But this flap here doesn't actually physically close if these doors are open. So if you wanted to model this, you can actually, again, another nice place to put a remove for flight tag. There's a little tiny black avionics box and a switch. This is chromate yellow. The inside of the panel is a nice off red. And it is actually really, really simple to just cut this out on the model and add a little bit of metal on the top for the panel. I've already done it myself. And that just adds that little touch of realism to it. There we go. Moving along, we have the left-hand undercarriage bay. Now, these doors are, again, modeled open. We have the do not disconnect decal on the inside that is supplied in the kit, which I was really impressed with, to be honest. And then we have the zinc chromate interior. Now, the yellow shade does vary from aircraft to aircraft. This one's quite vivid. And if you look inside, you can see all of the piping, which is a mixture of a little bit of zinc chromate and a lot of sort of dirty silver hydraulic lines. These look really good if you use, say, I've actually used a weathering pencil on mine. I tried painting them. I made a hash of it. They actually look excellent with just a little bit of weathering pencil. This is actually a panel that is fitted on the aircraft. Normally, this has been removed, so this is a feature. You would not normally see these pipes. But as we move into the back, and we can do some illuminated looks at this, but you can see it gets ridiculously dirty towards the rear. You can see these panels are shut as the aircraft takes off and lands. This rear portion is exceptionally sooty, and there are actually pipes at the back, and you can actually see a bright yellow fuel flow meter just there, which you can add in as a nice touch. The pipes that are modelled as zinc chromate as well. Moving down, we have the actual undercarriage door. This side has actually got a pumping handle for manually pumping the hydraulics fitted on the inside. That is not included in the kit, but would be really easy to add. And we've got the door itself, and then we have the landing gear. Now, this in the kit is definitely a work of art. I had enormous fun putting this together. And you can see, again, this is actually a slightly lighter grey than the undercarriage we looked at on the other aircraft. You can see it's all weathered down to zinc chromate. And this has actually got brand new tyres on it as well. These have definitely not ever flown, at least this one hasn't. These are ground locks. These would be fitted to secure the undercarriage during maintenance. You can add those if you want. They're not modelled in the kit, but it is a simple case of just making the actual silver portion here a little bit thicker. Moving back, we have the Oleo pneumatic shock absorber here. This is basically absorbs all the shock of the aircraft landing, and you can see we have a chrome portion which is not particularly large on the actual leg here. Now, this aircraft does actually have the serial printed on the bottom of it, which is pretty cool. So this is X-Ray Zulu 368 as you look up. And again, no pylons fitted onto this. We can look at some pylons shortly. And the other thing I'd probably draw your attention to here is you can actually see the little fillet at the base of the wing. This is modelled into the side of the kit, and when you fit the wing just stops and abuts this actual fillet on the model very nicely indeed. Again, we've got to the area where there's a lot of dirt and smut. This air brake now is extended, and you can see this is actually, again, weirdly enough, this has actually got looks like it's got a feathered camouflage line on it. I can't quite see from here. But moving across, you can see the inside of the air brake. Now, this side has got a decal for ejected hot gas, because of course here is the auxiliary power unit, which is the baby jet engine that starts the big jet engines. And this is embedded in the left-hand air brake bay. It was always very entertaining to see these start up because they would shoot a big fireball more often than not. So this is, again, a nice metallic. The exhaust with its little slot is nicely modelled in the kit and looks pretty good. The inside of here is a dirty zinc chromate with a couple of hide lines modelled. And as we move to the inside edge of the air brake bay, you will see that this is actually aircraft coloured. The inside is the same green that you see on the side of the jet. Moving back, we have our engine bay door fitted. And again, you can see this is now mismatched with the rest of the aircraft. This has got a soft camo line that transitions into a hard camo line. So another feature, they were interchangeable between aircraft, though swapping big panels is never fun, but it was definitely done. And we've got a vent hole here for engine bay cooling, which is nicely blanked with this blank here. I'm sure these never blew off in the wind ever. And these are fire access doors. They're kind of pinned closed. This one's broken. This one they shouldn't open like this. But this is where the fire extinguishant would be pushed in the event of a fire. And you can see they're highlighted with the red side. Again, there is quite a little bit of nice dark muck around these panels here. Moving on to the strake, which is nicely modelled in the kit. It sits at this distinctive, slightly away from it's not exactly perpendicular or 90 degrees to the actual cowling, and that is shown very nicely in the instructions. And again, we have a nice worn neoprene leading edge, and we have the blister here, which is effectively where the strong part of the actual strake is. And rolling back. I won't remove this because we looked at the other side, but this is a nice example of an intake cover in situ. So if you wish to cover up the exhausts, this is kind of what you see. This is just fabric. This one's got a bit floppy, but they do just push on. And then, rolling back, something I didn't cover on the other aircraft. This is the parachute cover just here. So we have a rubber cone. Now, I believe this is the earlier type. The later GR3s had a different shape. And these actually come away with the jet. The later ones hinge downwards. And you will see all sorts of different repair patches and plates on these. This one has one here. This is just kind of almost wire stitched on because these bounced and broke all the time. So they look like little Frankenstein stitches all over it just to show where they've been fixed. Whoop, this cable there. And then lastly, we can see on here, we have on the tailplane, we have the distinctive step, which is beautifully rendered in the kit. Just here. And these are just head-banging protection. These just stop us from walking into the jet. And these are often fitted on the flight line as well, just to stop you clouting yourself, potentially damaging the aircraft or potentially damaging yourself and raising a lot of paperwork. So that's what these are. These are just little rubber blungs. They come off quite nicely. So you can model these on as well. These look brilliant if you add them. Nice little remove for flight tag. I do like those. And that brings us to the rear end. So here we are on this side. I just wanted to point out to you, I mentioned on the other aircraft that it had a very much original applied serial. This has been repainted. You can actually see the ghost of the old numbers. There's a 6 just here and an 8 just here. And this has got a much more almost modern font style. So you can see this is actually much later applied. So this will have been repainted at some point for some reason or another. This sort of stuff happens, especially at depth maintenance where things are recovered. And if you transit up to the fin, you can see there is actually just forward of the hard camouflage green edge, there is a G for golf sort of silhouette here of a letter. And as I look, I can actually see several ghosts of different letters underneath. If you Google any serial numbers of these Jaguars, they had several different letter iterations. And you can see the letter E is actually painted on the fin in the same high gloss that the serial here is done. So these are put on at the same time. Underneath we have the fin flash, which has got a squadron emblem. This is 40 Squadron, and that is a vinyl sticker that has been applied over the top, and you can actually see it starting to come away with age, as they do. So here we are on the right-hand side of the aircraft still, the same serial that we've looked at, X-Ray Zulu 368, and this particular air brake is actually grey on the inside. Its opposite number was green on the inside, so these were very obviously painted to match the aircraft in and out. This side is different to the other side. We had the APU on the other side. On the right-hand side, we have the refueling point here, which is where fuel is put in. This is a NATO standard coupling, where they would have refueled the aircraft. Instead of the hot air markings we have on the other side, we have a refueling pressure limiting stencil here, because of course the refuel is limited to 25 psi, so you don't damage the tanks. Inside here, the bay is a lot more empty, but there are various little details. We've got some black boxes and some busyness that is nicely represented in the kit. And the refueling point is, again, a very sort of similar bluey grey, not a million miles away from the colour of the undercarriage leg. Although I have definitely seen some caps that are different colours to this. You can see them very occasionally as red or yellow. Again, if you can check your references, that would be really good. Here we have some hydraulic stencils. These are throughout the jet. Everybody loves applying stencil decals. They're the best. And there is a full set of stencils included in the kit, and I've looked them over, and I'm super impressed with their accuracy, to be honest. And they are just basically painted on and airbrushed on in the bay, so to speak. Moving along to the undercarriage, again, I suppose on this side there is worth looking in here, because the light is particularly good today, and you can see the hydraulic lines that run parallel along the bottom of the bay. They are modelled, and they are mostly silver, though there is one yellow one. A lot of the valves and hydraulic switching gear here is, again, the same sort of dark grey as you see on the undercarriage leg. We have this avionics box, which is very similar but different on the other side, with a little black box on here. And you can see the framing is actually, again, chromate yellow. And as we move to the back of the aircraft and look into the bay, you can see more dirt here, but there is a black avionics box just here which features in the kit, and that is a nice matte black. And these two pipes are roughly represented in the kit as well. There's two on this side. There is actually only one on the left-hand side, so if you really wanted to go nuts, you could cut one off. And you can see there's the yellow fuel flow meter just here, which is a nice little yellow portion with two grey couplings at either end. And if you go in with a fine brush, you can make that look really convincing. And you can even actually manage to paint the markings on the pipes if you wanted with some coloured bands. That looks really cool as well. So there we go. And that brings us to the front. And I suppose one of the next things we can move on to potentially is the cockpit. So we are at the bottom of the aircraft now. We're going to do a tour of the underside of the jet, which is not something you're going to see a lot in reference photos whatsoever. And I brought my handy light here, and we're going to look up and see what features we can find as we go back along the aircraft. So starting forward of the undercarriage bay door, we have our first aerial. This particular one is white with a neoprene leading edge, but I have seen them shade to a sort of dirty yellow as well. We have a little panel here. This is definitely some sort of sensor. I'm not 100% clued up as a mechanic and not avionics what that is, but you can see there is a shade of brown along here. And there is a second one of these actually further forward, just here, and I'll shine my light directly on it so you can actually see the colour. There we go. So moving back along the jet, we're now further along the underbelly. The centerline pylon has been removed on this jet, but you can actually see the outline, which shows an older camouflage pattern underneath, which is feathered. So you've got a bit of green and a bit of grey. You can actually see the mounting bolts, which would hold the pylon on. We've got the bottom edge of the gun bay doors here with these cooling vents and a blister to account for the structure of the gun, and a very dark hinge line towards the inside edge. All of this is, again, not too dirty, to be honest, but would benefit from a nice panel wash. As we move further back, we can see we've got the two undercarriage doors, grey on one side, green on the other. And then we just head further back along the aircraft to the engine area where we've got the all of the leaks and stains that you get down there. So we're underneath the rear of the jet where the engine bay doors come round and the keel of the aircraft is. So features we've got here, we've got some cooling entrances here. I can't exactly remember what they're for, if I'm honest. But you can see there is a nice oil leak going on here. Where the minute you get to this line here and aft, you have lots of dirt and streaks. There's lots of black streaks along here coming out from the air brake area, and more on the other side. And then as we move back, this is the anti-collision light. This is the later modification that is also available in the kit. So this would be a glue-on transparent part. Or if you want to do the earlier version, then you drill it out and you stick the lens in from the other side of the bay. Rolling back, we've got another fin protrusion here. And this is a mixture of black worn down to sort of the yellow colour this has got. In fact, no, tell a lie, that's definitely masking tape. This is all entirely matte black. It's got masking tape on it for one reason or another. And you can see there's various tiny little drain holes and such like featured along. So we are at the cockpit now. This is a really handy aircraft to show you actually because we've currently got the canopy removed, which gives you an excellent view of the rear bulkhead area. Now, if you look here, you can actually see we've got the pressure seal, which is for the actual pressurization of the cockpit. And you can see the piping around here is actually all black. And I think I actually put just a few touches of silver highlights and some dust onto mine just to make it look a little bit more convincing. You can see it has got a bit of dust and smut. And then we've got the two rods that connect the canopy. And then moving down, these are actually bungee cords, because would you believe it, these are actually, for opening the canopy is held closed by elastic tension, and then when you open it, the elastics relax, which is why we always keep our canopies open. And now we move on to the seat. The seat is a pre-mod, so this is the earlier type that is also featured in the kit. So you can see it's got the little strakes. You've got the actual parachute pack in the top, which is a canvas green colour, just here. And you can paint that in. There isn't actually any particular detail in the actual seat, but you can add stuff just to spruce it up a little bit. Just a little bit of paint, really, for colour representation. The seat itself is a sort of mattish black. Moving along to the headrest padding, this is a sort of a worn leather colour, again black. And as we move down, the kit does feature these nice distinctive square sections here, and they are an interesting shade of green, sort of a forest green colour. And then moving into the cockpit. So here we've got the actual seat padding. The kit doesn't come with straps. They are very easy to add, actually. This little portion here where the straps sort of originate from, which is a sort of plastic off-white, is actually modelled in the kit. And then there is actually a chrome outer here. You can feature that in the kit. We have the backrest, which is to some degree, it sits a little lower in the kit, but it is featured. And this is a sort of a dark off green. And then we have the straps. This is the messy cockpit I've just sat in it configuration. But generally, a lot of the time in aircraft, we wouldn't leave them like this. We would most certainly tidy these up and make sure that they sit. And these are the sort of things you might want to add in. Straps, I'm sure that there'll be some commercially available shortly. There almost always are. But these are your webbing straps, and they're just a nice shade of mustard mixed with green with these nice anodized blue buckles. Then moving down, we've got the seat. I'm finding myself tidying this up as I go. We've got the little, what we call the bunny ears, which go around on the inside of the legs. And then we have the quick release box QRF, and that normally sits back. That's really easy to add into the model. A little bit of sprue painted black is all I've done, and it looks pretty convincing at 48th scale. The handle is nicely modelled in the actual kit, and I was actually quite happy with it. I've included it. It is better to paint it black and throw a hint of yellow on there. I find overdoing the yellow just draws a bit too much attention to it. And the base is an anodized red colour. Moving into the cockpit proper, we'll start on the left and we'll go round to the right. We have the distinctive cabin inward-outward vent valves and such. For those who know their stuff, I haven't quite got the exact component names in my head at this point in time, but this is to do with cabin pressurization. This is a nice light aircraft grey, I would say Humbrol 64 if I'm feeling like doing a Humbrol call-out. We have a wander lamp. This one's not attached, it should be. This is like a little torch, and it is actually modelled in the kit, and you can include that. And its cable is actually recessed into the actual model. We have the crash switch with its little hint of yellow and black just along here. We have a toggle handle here, which is again a nice satin black. Here we have the throttles. They are back at the moment on the model. They are actually modelled forwards, which up to about here, which isn't too big a deal, but you can move them if you want. They're not that hard to move. But they're normally sat in the rear. We have a safety lanyard that goes between the throttle, the arrestor hook pull handle, which is a light grey, which I don't think is featured in the kit, but it is down and in, and down to the undercarriage handle lollipop just here, which is red. All of this is a very matte black in this particular cockpit. While I'm on this side, I should really definitely draw your attention to the sill, which has again been worn by, a lot of this is sort of probably more training damage, but a lot of people getting in and out over time. So this is worn silver on the edge with a nice zinc chromate halo. So there's a nice patina on there. Moving into the aircraft, as we go to the front console and stick, we have the front panel here, which is a display. That is actually not as green as often is portrayed. This is kind of like an offish sort of white. It is a little challenge. I hand painted mine. It isn't actually that bad. And the instrumentation is actually really well provided for in the decal sheet. And what I did was I actually sat and cut out each individual decal, and they fit wonderfully into the various recesses of the actual instrument panel. And that looked really good, to be honest. Again, there's various little coloured buttons here, which you can actually represent with little dimples of paint in the kit, and that gives it that real natural look. There are a couple of engine gauges missing here. They would normally be there. But the central warning panel here on the right is also modelled. And you can actually see, because it's not backlit, they wouldn't be very bright, but you can go with a very dark red and a very dark yellow and just put a few very fine streaks of paint, and that looks really convincing. Moving around to, let's do the stick next. I suppose we've got the stick. Again, the stick is represented, the base of it is actually either metallic or grey painted, which is a nice little feature. You can actually paint that a different colour, which gives it some more detail. The stick is as basic as you'd expect at 1/48 scale, but you can add little red dots for the various buttons. There's a little bit of a blue halo here, and you can give it a tiny bit of chipping if you really want to, and that'll give it some real look. As we move on to the right-hand side, we have the distinctive pylon. I think they're jettison switches, but they're yellow and black just here. So we have yellow and black on the right-hand side. They can be represented nicely with a bit of paint. And we have the brake-in handle, which is also yellow and black, but most of the black usually wears off, and they're pretty much predominantly yellow. And we have radio knobs here, which are very prominently moulded in, which are a light grey. We have the cabin pressurization, which has got a blue lever and a white one, which are left in various positions. And then as we go back, we just have a selection of circuit breakers. If we look at the floor now, as you can see in front of the seat, you can see distinctive wear marks where the actual feet of the pilot have been. And these are pretty typical. So they've got a silver center with a yellow zinc chromate halo. And actually, I think with hindsight from making mine, I would have probably primed it in zinc chromate and sort of sanded that back. As it stood, I ended up representing that with some paint and some chipping pencils, and it looked really good. And you probably struggle to see them, and you do in the kit, to be fair, but the rudder pedals are further back, and all the sharp edges of those are worn to silver. As we move forward to the coaming, we have the little impact buffer. This is actually a later replacement foam one. They were sort of a leverette covered with an orange foam core, and we got a little bit worried about those degrading over time, so we've replaced those so that it's not terribly representative, but a matte black. This is just literally for head impact. We have an early hood here, which is represented nicely in the kit with a piece of clear. And this is actually not a shiny lens, but actually this is a lot of individual little lights. So this is a very, very low resolution hood, as featured with any aircraft that was designed in the 60s. It is very primitive, but from our modern perspective, it's not a big projection lens, so it's not actually as shiny as you'd think it would be. I've often on aircraft painted these quite glossy, but I haven't on this particular one. The combing is again a matte black, but the sun has faded it down to a sort to a sort of very matte finish. So a sort of a dusty, chalky covering would be nice. The edge of the windscreen here is definitely more grey than it is black. And then as we move on to the shield itself, you can see that there's plenty of wear down to zinc chromate on the edge. And as we move further forward, you can see all the way down to the actual matte black glare prevention that you see on there, which again is not as dark a black as you'd potentially want to paint it. It's often a very off black. So if you tone that to a very dark grey, that would look really good. We're on a jet that has a canopy, so we'll start at the canopy and we'll move back along the top of the aircraft. Here we have our canopy in the open position. We always keep ours open so that the bungees are actually relaxed, and we're always worried they're going to break over time. So we tend to keep the aircraft open. You can see the cutting marks for emergency access. We've got a nice, I actually was going to say that was German, but I was reading it upside down. It definitely says emergency. And cut here, these are included in the kit. You've got the decal for all the way around. And if you look towards the front, you can actually see there is the master armament safety switch key, which is traditionally attached onto the top of the canopy by either a Velcro strap, or this one's just tied on with removed before flight tag. So you could do a nice little feature of that. That is, again, very realistic to the aircraft. You can see the key dangling on the end. That is very much a part of the Jag, although I'm not sure if that isn't a training one, to be honest, but that's pretty much what they look like in real life. Moving back, now we have the parts of the environmental control system. We have an intake here. This intake here is very much weathered and worn. This is in the leading edge of the airflow. So actually this has got a weld repair on one side, but you can see plenty of opportunity for chipping here. It is very small. It is rendered very accurately on the model. And this piece glues on separately on just like it does on the model. And you can see there's a nice dark panel line. Here we have our two aerials, and this is a early GR1, so this has got a pair. They're normally, these are definitely weathered with time. They're normally a sort of a yellowish colour, sometimes a bit lighter than this, perhaps similar to what you see under here. And then we have a neoprene leading edge, often repaired, very irregular. So this one's shorter, that one covers a lot more. Of course, if you're doing the later GR1s, you've got a single aerial, and I think it's on the right. It says me glancing across to a different aircraft. So you've got, and this comes with a nice little jig that you can drill out the holes for. And see, there isn't actually much of a panel line here. This is a little bit more blended. So I wouldn't highlight this feature. In fact, I might even go back and smooth this out on my own model. And this is all one panel all the way up to here. And then we come to the exhaust. Again, a nice dark colour on the inside. That just goes straight in here. I'm sure we can get a shot of that. Now, moving on to the aircraft itself and the intakes. We'll move over to the other side and do that. So now we're upstairs on top of the aircraft. You can see a lot of these are quick release fasteners, so they have teeny little yellow alignment markings, which you can add if you're really keen. But again, lots of chance for chipping along here. A lot of these panels, they're a little bit battered as they've been removed and refitted. We have a panel off here, which would make a nice feature if you wanted to, but that's obviously normally going to be on. You can actually see some of the control runs just down the side here. And then moving down to the top of the intake, this is a gravity refill point. There isn't one on the other side of the jet, but they do feature throughout. These are these little circles. They're not very often used, and they often sort of blend in with the paintwork, really. So you don't need, I wouldn't draw too much attention to those. You can see a lot of the rivets have lost their paint, and these are, again, little nice features you can have. This is the no step sign. We do normally put a wooden crawlboard over the top of this, and they would have done in maintenance as well. I'm sure we can find one of those to show you. And these are the feature is a nice big no-step decal as one piece in the kit. I'm probably going to cut out the middle transparency on mine because I tend to have a habit of messing up big transparent decals. But I'm sure that'll go down really nicely. I've put a few decals on already and they're cartograph and they're lovely. If we look towards the front, we can actually see more wear on the leading edge intake lip as well. That's a nice little feature. And there's a little bit of chromate yellow showing through towards the inboard edge on the actual green. We're back on Alpha Juliet, which is feathered camouflage. So you can see the line there. So as we transit back, so we have, again, another no step, some nice feature here where these fasteners have been replaced. So you do see this a lot. Their fasteners are not then touched up the colour of the aircraft very often. And you can see some nice examples of mismatched camouflage and different shades of grey where there's been changes, repairs and such done over time. This gravity refuel point has obviously been removed and refitted, so you've got a green interior and then you've got a nice primer outside just here. And you can see the general state of the wing. What I would say with this aircraft is this has been in the weather a modest amount, so this has probably lightened off significantly more than it would have been in service. I'd say that this is much closer to this would have been much closer to the grey you see here originally. This tends to be the side that fades first because it sees the most sun. So this is quite a high contrast. You can see all of the screws for the top surface of the wing. This is a fuel tank. And you can see they're all there and also featured in the kit. So now we'll move on to out here. Here we have the strake. Now this is where the overwing pylons would go on the Desert Storm option. This is the traditional more traditional strake, and you can actually see that it is two parts. And I have noticed there is actually a slight panel line on the actual model on this actual feature, and they do glue on wonderfully. And you can see again, this one's just literally painted green leading edge, grey rear. Moving out, we've got the roundel, somewhat faded over time, but again, a nice feature. And as you move outboard, the hole in the wing is actually for the pylon bolt through the top, so that is probably going to be faired over normally. We have some mismatched panels towards the end. You can see where the slat is deployed, that the inside of that is the same colour as the camouflage as well. Moving towards the rear, we have the spoilers, and then here we have the no step for the aft of the flap. We have what possibly is a formation light here. That is a different colour again. That's something you could highlight on the kit. Along here we have the transition between the wing and the fuselage. You can see the wing actually leaves the aircraft here, but I'm pretty sure the kit join is actually this angled line here. This is a very distinctive feature and looks pretty good actually on the kit in terms of join. We have, again, some wear and some weathering along the rear. We have panels with worn edges. And as we look towards the back, you can actually see that these panels are actually quite marked along the top. We have little ducts on the side. They're modeled separately on the kit and look pretty good as they are as well. Here we have what you call a NACA duct, which is the part of the intake for the ECS system as well. This is a separate panel on the kit, but you can see it has got quite a distinctive line around it. So it is as it is glued on. You're not going to need to fill the sides. This is where the kit wing joins specifically. And then moving forward, here we have an early red anti-collision light. This is the earlier pre-mod, as they say. This is featured in the kit. You drill through and you get a little clear bit for the middle. The later ones are basically just fitted over the top of this. Moving forward, another aerial, nice and yellow. And if we come to this side here, we can actually see the little vent, which is a little intake just here, which is a separate panel on the kit. This was modelled effectively separately for moulding purposes because it sticks out at 90 degrees, basically horizontally. So, and this is where our forward wing joins. Moving along, we've got our panel here. Some of these are black. This one's unpainted, but it's a composite panel. And again, you've got a lot of fade here as well. So this one unusually isn't painted, but you do see them in matte black from time to time. And then on this side, we have much the same. You can see the spoilers on the outboard. There is a tip aerial you can see that is white with a neoprene leading edge. And yeah, from up here, I think that pretty much covers it.